Shall we start, ma'am?
Yes.
A very pleasant morning to all the attendees, esteemed faculty members and research scholars who have joined us today. We have come to the final day, the sixth day of the Faculty Development Program on Futuristic Trends of Language and Literature, Impact on 21st Century Learners, organized by the Department of English and Other Foreign Languages, SRM Institute of Science and Technology, Ramapuram campus, Chennai. And it gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all once again. Today, we are broadcasting a live webinar on Mirroring the Orient, the reflection of Indian heritage in English literature. And we have with us today Dr. S. Kumaran, Assistant Professor, PG and Research, Department of English, Thiruvalluvar Government Arts College, Rasipuram, who is going to deliver an insightful and interesting lecture presentation on this topic. I'm sure all the attendees who were present either throughout the week, the previous 5 days with us are already here or will be sure to join us today. And it is as it is the final day, and this is on a very thought-provoking topic. And I'm sure that Dr. Kumaran's session is going to be very lively and bring this FDP to a successful close. Before we move on to the welcome address, once again, I would like to gently remind all the attendees who have joined us today to stay with us till the end of the session to access the quiz and feedback link. Please don't forget to post your queries, if any, in the live chat stream on YouTube, only during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. As usual, there will be a mid-session attendance form also today. The link will be posted during the session at any time, and we will remind you of the same. I would like to gently remind you all to fill that form also, which will take up hardly a minute of your time, and then you can return to the lecture immediately after. I would now like to call upon Dr. Rema, Professor and Head, Department of English and Other Foreign Languages, to deliver the welcome address. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Walter. Very, very happy morning, dear participants and attendees. We have successfully reached the last day of our week-long FDP on futuristic trends of language and literature, impact on 21st century learners. Any task will evince bouquets and brickbats. But thank you, participants. There were more bouquets than brickbats, and that has motivated us to organize more useful events in future. The Department of English and Other Foreign Languages, SRM Institute of Science and Technology, is very happy to welcome you all. You all have been excellent participants, and our speakers have been so informative. We thank Almighty for all the grace He has showered on us through the entire week. At this great moment, I express my heartfelt thanks and gratitude to the speaker of the day, Dr. S. Kumaran, Assistant Professor, PG and Research Department of English, Thiruvalluvar Government Arts College, Rasipuram. He will throw light on a very interesting topic, Mirroring the Orient, the reflection of Indian heritage in English literature. I'm sure as teachers of literature, we are very proud of our rich and varied heritage and would always love to hear about it. Thanks a lot, Dr. Kumaran, and welcome you, sir. Before we hear the speaker, let me hand the forum over to my colleague, Dr. Savitha.
Thank you, ma'am. Happy morning to everyone. On behalf of the Department of English and Other Foreign Languages, SRM Institute of Science and Technology, Ramapuram, I feel privileged to introduce the chief guest of the day, Dr. Kumaran, who will enlighten us on the topic, Mirroring the Orient, a reflection of Indian heritage in English literature. He is working as Assistant Professor in the PG and Research Department of English, Thiruvalluvar Government Arts College, Rasipuram. Dr. Kumaran completed his master's degree from Loyola College, Chennai, MPhil from Madurai Kamaraj University, and doctorate from Anna University, Chennai. He has also earned a postgraduate diploma in the teaching of English from EFLU, Hyderabad. He has 15 years of teaching and 8 years of research experience. He is also qualified in Beck Higher and Teaching Knowledge Test (TKT) Cambridge English. Dr. Kumaran has presented more than 50 papers in national and international conferences and published 33 papers in international journals and 17 papers in national journals. He has also written a number of articles in anthologies. He has to his credit 4 books. Also, Dr. Kumaran has been a resource person for various institutions and has given more than 25 invited lectures. He is a recognized research supervisor of Anna University, Chennai and Periyar University, Salem, and is guiding MPhil and PhD research scholars. He is also a doctoral committee member in Anna University, Chennai, an Indian examiner for Manonmaniyam Sundranar University, academic counselor for MA and PG CTE at EFLU Hyderabad, associate editor and editorial board member in more than 8 international journals. I take immense pleasure in inviting Dr. Kumaran to take over the forum. Over to you, sir.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. I take this opportunity to first of all congratulate as well as thank the organizers. See, I have been the participant, one of the participants along with others attending this FDP. So I found the response that the people give to this program that's overwhelming. Then coming to the topic of my presentation, yeah, I need to present. Sir, I need to present, sir.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir. You can share your screen, sir.
Earlier I made it, but that is not visible. I have to share it once again now.
Yes. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I'm sharing. Visible?
Yes, sir.
Right. Fine, sir. Is it visible now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Let me proceed, sir. So
Okay, sir.
the topic that I would like to speak is mirroring the Orient. What is this mirroring the Orient? What I thought of explaining is how Indian heritage is reflected in English literature. It's quite interesting why I chose this. First, let us introduce ourselves to the topic. I have given you the clipping here, which you might have seen it in so many social media accounts. That's based on the Macaulay's address to the British Parliament on 2nd February 1835. Please read the quote given there. I believe I know many of you have come across this. Still, please have a look. I have traveled across the length and breadth of India, and I haven't seen one person who is a beggar, who is a thief. Such wealth I have seen in this country, such high moral values, people of such caliber that I don't think we would ever conquer this country unless we break the very backbone of this nation, which is her spiritual and cultural heritage. And therefore, I propose that we replace her old and ancient education system, her culture, for if the Indians think that all that is foreign and English is good and greater than their own, they will lose their self-esteem, their native culture, and they will become what we want, them a truly dominated nation. Once when we read this, definitely we might have got goosebumps. We might be wondering what a kind of outlook towards India. But to our surprise, many of the research done on this statement proved this was not pronounced by Macaulay. That is the hoax circulated by social media. So this is what I would like to project. I used this deliberately. Most of the times we think in a wrong way, in another way, what is contrary to reality. So this the word Indophilism. It should be very careful. Indophilism, it's love for India, interest towards India. So in British literature, you find this Indophilism, that's love for our country. Though they are Britishers, some of them have really good liking towards our country, which is going to be projected in this presentation. So the aim of my presentation is not to eulogize, is not to have a blind veneration towards our culture. It is not my intention. My intention is not to eulogize our Indian heritage. Rather, my purpose is to bring out how our Indian heritage attracted the British people, as well as how they portrayed the things which we fail to notice. Why I mean we fail to notice, we have got so many writings on India, especially our own educated people, so-called great intellectuals. They are projecting India in a negative light. What I mean, there in their writings you find only journalistic kind. That means they learned India, they wanted to project India just to satisfy the Western readers. That is what we have been doing. My question is, if we go on portraying the wounded civilization of India, how be the wound be healed? As Gayatri Spivak asked in her, can the subaltern speak? As long as you subordinate them, we need to think. As long as you project only the negative side of India, definitely there won't be any positive light that will bring something to limelight. So with this question, I would like to proceed further. In most of the British literature, we think India is used something secondary in the sense most of the British writers, when they started writing about India, they had the colonizers' mission. Colonizers' mission in the sense they felt it was their duty. It was their duty it was their duty to project how people in India reflect. Let us proceed further. There are so many writers who projected India in good as well as negative light. The first name that comes to our mind when you think of Indian reflection in British literature is Rudyard Kipling. Kipling, most of the people think Kipling was interested in the exotics of the country. Exotics in the sense is something strange. For example, the way we dress, the way we speak, our culture, the festivals we have, the music we have, all those things are exotic to the foreigners. So people believe Rudyard Kipling focused only on the exotic aspect of India. Then many thought Kipling was a spokesman of the ruling class. As a typical spokesman, anybody's intention was to use Indian situation as a background. So all the main characters would be Britishers, might be Anglo-Indians, whereas India is used as a backdrop of the activities of the British people. That is what people like Kipling, they follow. Moreover, in Kipling's work, you can find the journalistic aspect. Journalistic writing you can find not only in Kipling, even in Indians settled abroad. That means any kind of journalistic writing has only the Western viewers in mind. That means they wanted to impress the readers. They didn't have any real intention to portray the beauty of the thing that they view. So these journalistic writings should be cautioned. So most of the novels written by Kipling, most of the novels looked at India. For example, you have a reflection of northwestern India. You find the reflection of Punjab, Peshawar, or Simla. In fact, in one of his novels, The Hill of Illusion, you find Simla is just used as a background. Even another novel, The Phantom Rickshaw, you find love triangle. That means there is a British officer, and then he falls in love with the wife of another British officer. Then the love proceeds from one to another. So these kinds of relationship, what we find in Kipling, you find Indian setup, whereas all the characters are Britishers. So these people should think. Why Kipling did all these things? Let me read this quote. All the British writers, They thought it was the duty of the colonizers to civilize the ancients. That is reflected in these lines. Civilizing mission among the Asiatics. They asked the people, the writers, to take up the white man's burden. Send forth the best you breed. Go bind your sons to exile, to save your captives near, to wait in heavy harness on flattered folk and wild. Your new god, son and peoples, half devil, half child. See what the quotation reveals. Kipling, these lines are taken from the verse written by Kipling, Rudyard Kipling. So according to Kipling, it is the duty of the white writers to educate the people of Orient. So with this mindset, that means he considers himself the spokesperson of the white people, which we have to acknowledge. Let us pick up one novel. See, it is not possible to take so many novels. So let me take one novel from each writer. So the novel written by Kipling is Kim. This novel represents the unchanging East because we have two characters, prominent characters here. One is the Tesho Lama, then there is another person, Kim. He is the hero of the novel. So these two characters, they have their own quest. For example, Lama is in search of the river of Arrow. According to Lama he is from the other side of Himalayas. Might be a Chinese or a Tibetan, somewhere he comes from the other side of Himalayas. He comes to India. The Lama himself answers. He has come here because he wants to find the river of Arrow. According to him, this river of Arrow is the river of healing. That means once when you find this river, when you take bath in this river, when you cross this river, you can overcome all your previous births, all your sufferings can be converted into forgetfulness. So this river of Arrow plays a vital role. Again, Kim practically he is an outsider to our place, but still Kim he wants to find a great Red Bull. This great Red Bull, it is a Red Bull of a green field. So these two persons, they have their own search. That means Kim is in search of something, Lama is in search of something. So what Kipling does is he makes the union of two different forces. They are poles apart. Kim and Lama, both of them don't have any connection. Totally individual. They are unique individuals, but still some kind of force, the invisible force unites these two people, and these two people join together. We cannot justify why Kim, in spite of his lack of trust in the Lama, he wants to follow Lama. We don't know, but still he accepts. Then here in these cities, India is shown as a land of mystery and grandeur. That means everything has its kind of a holy atmosphere there. For example, Lama uses these devices. All desire was suffering to him have turned into bliss now. So this is what the characters achieve in India, in coming to India. My question as well as my analysis, many people thought that the writer, that Rudyard Kipling as a savage, or maybe he was the spokesperson of the British. But my findings, we can't take Kipling in that sense, because in Kipling you find real appreciation of the grandeur and mystery of India. That is what he expresses, because an ordinary man cannot sympathize with the Lama. Lama was a laughing stock to many foreigners, whereas when you read the portrayal of Lama, you find Kipling one with the Lama. You find some kind of synchronization between Lama and Kipling that shows it was not just a reflection, rather it was his faith in Indian culture reflected in the novel Kim. The next writer I would like to choose is E.M. Foster. There is a difference between Kipling and E.M. Foster. In a sense, Kipling wanted to establish the presence of British, the necessity of British presence in India. Whereas E.M. Foster, he questioned the presence of British here. He believed British doesn't have any goal to be here. He strongly believed it is the colonizers' exploitation of the natives. Why we may question why these colonizers were interested in coming to India. The very strong reason that we can propose is India was considered a pagoda tree. A pagoda tree, you know very well. For example, there is an idiomatic expression to give a shake to the pagoda tree. To give a shake in the sense to gather easy wealth. India was a land of prominent wealth. There were rubies, there were pearls, there were diamonds. So these Britishers considered to loot these resources. That's why E.M. Foster questioned the appearance of British in India. He told them plainly there was no necessity for the British to rule India. So that was an outcome which we get in E.M. Foster's writing. Let us pick up one novel written by him, that is A Passage to India. There are four important characters we need to understand in A Passage to India: Mrs. Moore, Miss Custard, Fielding, Assis. So here only one is an Indian, that is Assis. The remaining three are Britishers. The main argument of this novel is whether an Indian and a British can be friends. That's the question raised by E.M. Foster. So here, Mrs. Moore and Miss Custard, both of them from England, they came to India just to experience, to gain the first-hand experience of Indian atmosphere. They wanted to know what was Indian culture, what was Indian people. So they came here. So Mr. Fielding, he is the principal of the school. He is an Englishman. He is closely associated with Assis. Assis, he accompanies Mrs. Moore and Mr. Custard to a cave. That's Malabar Caves. But in the Malabar Caves, you find Assis. Malabar Cave is the place which represents the, what we can say, the mysterious India. For example, one side in India you have got mosque, whereas in the other side you have caves. That itself reflects the complex situation of India. Cave represents primordial image. So Mrs. Moore, Miss Custard, when they enter the cave, they become alien to the place. Whereas Assis, as part of the country, he feels synchronized with the cave. That's why Miss Custard mistakes Assis as if he is trying to molest her. Then Assis is framed. Then during the final encounter, during the verdict, Miss Custard realized she has been deceived. So when she accepted Assis' innocence, Assis was released. He was not punished, but he had a deep conscience which was wounded. With wounded conscience, Assis wants to leave the place. Whereas there is a final meeting between Assis and the Englishman. The Englishman asks Assis, "Can we be friends?" See the reply given by Assis. He becomes very angry and then he says, "That's certain, clear out. You fellows, double quick, I say. We may hate one another, but we hate you most." He says, "We people have differences among ourselves, but we unite when it comes to hating you." He says, "If I don't make you go, Ahmad will, Karim will. It is 5,500 years we shall get rid of you. Yes, we shall drive every blasted Englishman into the sea." And then he rode against him furiously, and then he concluded half kissing. See, there is love towards English, but still with half kissing, "You and I shall be friends." Look at that. See, he deliberately he wants. He feels, according to Assis, as long as the British presence in India is there, he cannot love the British man. That's why he tells the Englishman, that is the Fielding, he tells him, I'm interested in being friendly, but the earth doesn't want. The jail doesn't want. Once when you go out of the country, then we shall be friends. This is what is the answer given by Foster. According to Foster, as long as British serve in India, there is no possibility of that friendship. This is clearly explained in our analysis. Then the third person, see, we can find the evolution of Indian reflection, because in Kipling you find the presence, the assertion of the presence, the necessity of British presence, whereas in Foster you find questioning of the British presence, whereas in John Masters it is a step ahead. according to Master, he believes in the importance of the national liberation movement. So he portrays in his novels how Indian national liberation movement gains momentum. One of the novels, only one novel I'm going to take from Masters, that is Bhavani Junction. So this novel is based on the eve of India's independence. You have two characters reflecting the how the culture, there is a split between two cultures, between British and Indian. There is a heroine of this novel, Victoria Jones. This lady is caught between two poles. One side there is her British identity, on the other side there is Indian identity. So she is unable to decide which one to be chosen. Right from the beginning to the end, you find such a confusion. See, most of the time we do involve in diasporic study. These people did such a diasporic study nearly some 2 centuries ago. That's the beauty of these colonial writers. There is another character, Patrick Taylor. Look at his words. Let me quote. The last thing I had said about going home was more foolishness, and I knew it. We couldn't go home. We could not become English because we were half Indian. We could not become Indian because we were half English. We could only stay where we were and be what we were. The English would go anytime now, and we were. So this is the outcome. Once when you come to India, there is no going back. So these English people, they might be some Anglo-Indians too, they wanted to merge with the culture of India. Such a portrayal is the evolution of people's perception of Indian heritage. Then in the fourth writer is Paul Scott. This is the culmination of British view of India, because in his novels you find the objective and impartial views, whereas compared to other colonial, post-colonial or colonial British writers, you find some kind of subjective views. Whereas in Paul Scott you find most of the subjective, objective and impartial views. Let us take one particular petrology. There are 4 books into this particular novel, the Rajwater. In this novel, we find the portrayal of the disintegration of British Empire. Even Paul Scott wonders, he feels some kind of hatred towards their own people. Strongly he believes, I left India with the growing feeling of amazement and even shame. How could we influence this country for so long and finally know so little about it? This is his findings. That means he accepts British people ruled India, but unfortunately they did not gain anything from India. So he blames the Britishers, as well as he differs from Kipling. Differs in the sense Kipling believed in the presence, the necessity of the presence of Britishers, whereas Paul Scott, he inverts the proposition. He strongly believes India itself is better than British country. We find in his writing how India was looted in the name of civilization mission. In this novel, particular novel, you find 2 characters. One is Daphne Manners and then Harikumar. Then there is a tragic love. So she is an English lady, Manners. Then Harikumar is an educated Indian. You find a tragic love because finally Harikumar is charged by the British officer and Roland Merrick. Some kind of rivalry between them. See, the British officer couldn't digest the fact the lady of his country couldn't accept him, whereas she accepts an Indian. So that kind of conflict goes in this novel. Moreover, the city portrayed here is Mayapur. This Mayapur can be the reflection of the whole Indian continent. Again, there is the divide and rule policy, which was practiced by the Britishers. These theoretically, I will explain in the later slides how Britishers were clever in promoting the hatred among the Indians. So these kind of reflection you find in this novel, Rajwater. Then with this ending, we will have one more beautiful quote in a research paper written by Raji Narasimhan. Its title, Spells of Indophilism. She brings out the necessity of Indophilism. Let us read the quote. Indophilism attracts, for the feelings are not fake, or the feelings are not fake. There is an openness and adolescent innocence, and honestly turned on quality about them. And in them, we recognize our own selves. The self is shown is mostly a buried self, one seldom consciously thought about. So, according to Raji Narasimhan, Indo-Philism is real. When someone expresses the love towards India, there is a genuine feeling expressed in it. That's what we find in these writings. Let us have some kind of analysis. There is a quotation in Passage to India. What a wonderful river and what a terrible river. So this river image we find in most of the novels written by the Britishers. They find life in the river. That I will explain later. River is considered the image of India. Moreover, they find river as the image of Brahman. In one more novelist you take, Somerset Maugham, the brilliant novelist who has portrayed how India is spiritually more powerful compared to all other countries. In his novel The Razor's Edge, you find the hero Larry. Larry is an ex-military man from America. He visits India because he was totally disillusioned with war. He was totally dejected with life. He wanted to gain his own understanding what life is. So he visits India. Look at his achievement. He himself says, suddenly he becomes aware of an intense conviction that India has something to give me that I had to have. It seemed to me that a chance was offered to me. I must take it there. Then, or it would never be offered me again. So he strongly believes only in India he could get such kind of satisfaction. With this, let us move on to poetry. Why I chose poetry? So far, we had views of the British writings in prose. What I believe, rather than prose, in poetry you find better reflection. Uh, the first poet that comes to our mind is Robert. So let me read the see. I haven't quoted. Only the lines are indented. There is not a land on earth more fair than that whose soil the Ganges claims. There is not a land more blessed than where through countless lakes it rolls its waves. According to Robert, there is no country like India because in India there is the Ganges, beautiful river with clean water, though it has its wonders. Then there is Himalayas, the mighty Himalayas. So these people, these British poets, are much inspired by the atmosphere, the physical setting of India. The first poet, official poet, who recorded Indian views in this poem is James Hickey. He was the editor of Bengal Gazette. He was interested in the British social life, as well as he projected India's climate, as well as he captured how the Gwalior fort was attacked by the British. So these writers, these poets especially, they were positive towards the spiritual heritage of India and then projected in their poems. But the foremost or the representative or maybe the popular linguist of the times, William Jones, he was the one who founded Asiatic Society in 1784. He brought out two magazines also. One was Asiatic Miscellany, the other one is Asiatic Researchers. So he used these two magazines to portray the Oriental spirit. Especially he translated Shakuntalam of Kalidas as well as Geet Govind of Jayadev. We should accept the relevance of the translation. Most of the translated works, they triggered the imagination of the British writers. So that was what we neglect. Those British writers, they understood. So he composed poems like, let me read the poem, a stanza from a poem. To the east, a lovely country, wide extends, India, whose borders the wide ocean bounds, the rich soil washed by 1,000 rivers, pours on the natives wealth without control. So the main point is India was blessed with inexplicable wealth, wealth without control. That is the beauty of India, recorded by William Jones. Some more poems by William Jones we will have. He published a poem on Kashmir. Let us have a glimpse of the poem, a stanza from it, where captive birds forever join the strains, where herbs and flowers forever grace the plains, over land and water blooming, flowers abound. Nature with all her gifts, Kashmir has crowned. So the impact of Kashmir, it cannot be overlooked. Not only by Jones, there were so many British poets who were much impressed by the beauty of Kashmir, and then they expressed the beauty in many of their poems. As well as he composed some excellent hymns on Sanskrit literature. One of the hymns on Kamadev, let us have a look. Let me read a stanza from the poem. Hail power unknown, for at thy back wails and grows, their bosoms deck, and every laughing blossom dresses with gems of his dusky tresses. I feel thy genial flame divine. According to him, this hymn to Kamadev, we know the god of love. This, especially this hymn, we find how Kamadev wanted to test the power of his arrow on Lord Shiva. Ultimately, what happened, we know he was burnt into ashes. That was the result of his interest. So, such Kamadev is presented gloriously by James in this poem, Jones in this poem. According to him, Indian gods, they had their own kind of beauty, which could far repel the attraction of the British. Then William Jones, he also finds this may be a negative term. According to others, Indians were uncivilized, Indians were cruel, Indians were fanatic. But according to William Jones, it was not so. He found something worthy of admiration among the Indians. He deliberately he wanted to prove Indians were civilized people. The Britishers had something to learn from Indian. Apart from William Jones, there is one more poet. He was the founding editor of the Occidental Star. He reveals Indians as noble, brave, just, and full of highest determinations. Say, bear with me. I have to give you examples. Simply poetry cannot be expressed. Rather, deliberately I have given some stanzas so that you yourself can go through these slides and then find out whether I can justify what they say or not. Let me read the stanza. There are Indians who can bravely bleed, who thirst in war for honor's glorious meal, who noble souls possessing, generous, just, rejoice to raise their brethren from the dust, of purpose firm, invariably great, they sternly bend to the decrees of fate. These see unmoved death's terror flame around, and hear with steady nerve the cannon's sound. See, this is what I would like to note. So many British people, they thought Indians were meek, Indians were ineffective, whereas some British writers, they proved Indians were brave, they were ready to die for their own honor as well as for the honor of their country. So this particular poem, it is an impression of such brave and noble souls of Indians. There is one more beautiful poet, a wonderful poems written by him, John Leyden. His purpose is totally different. He projected on social and religious life of India. So I would like to draw your attention to the social reforms carried out by him, particularly these God murders. I don't know how many of you are familiar with God murders, but this God murder, it is a perennial theme which attracts people from India as well as abroad. Got in the sense, these British writers, they wounded much over the sight of dead bodies, over the sight of sick persons on the banks of the rivers like Ganges or Hooghly. This that was a tradition of our people that we can't say no. We have to accept certain things which might be different to the foreign eyes. God murders, what he says as God murders is, it was the tradition followed in India. Whenever people became old, sick people, they were thrown or they were left at the banks of the river, because it was the belief of our Indian people. Aged people, when they die at the river, at the banks of river Ganges or river Hooghly, they would become holy. They would overcome the birth. That is what the future birth. That is the belief of our ancient people. That is why they deliberately they left their sick fathers, sick foreparents on the banks of the rivers. But that sight was so painful to the British people. That is what one of the poets, John Leyden, makes in this poem. For pomp of human sacrifice cannot the cruel blood suffice. Of tigers which these islands rear, why was there a need to sacrifice the human beings? He questions what was the necessity to sacrifice a human. So such kind of things awaken the conscience of our Indian people too. Human sacrifices were banned because of the knowledge created or the awareness created by the British poets. Then there were war poets too. They projected about the conquest as well as the motives that guided the British. You see, one aspect which we need to notice is there is so much of emotional stress for the British people. As we think they did not come here with happiness. No, we cannot accept that. There are so many British people, they came to India with a heavy heart. They could not leave their own country. They could not leave their family members in England. But still, they have come here just to give a shake to the Bacoda tree, just to loot the resources. That's why in one of the poems, Leyden says how they have come to India against their whims and fancies. They accept India is not a congenial country for them. They know very well they have to suffer here. But in spite of that knowledge, they have come here just to amass wealth. Let us have this stanza. For thee, while yellow slave. This yellow slave refers to coin, money. I left a heart that loved me true. So that means I left so many people, my own family members at England. I crossed the tedious ocean wave. I have crossed the sea. What for? To roam in climes unkind and new. So I have come here just to face the atmosphere which is unkind to me. That's the outburst of the British poet. There is one more British poet. He was Calcutta Bishop of Calcutta too, Reverend Reginald Heber. His focus was on the beauty of nature. One particular poem that brings out the beauty of Indian peacock. Have a glimpse, please. With pendant train and rushing wings, aloft to the gorgeous peak of springs, and he, the bird of 100 dyes, whose plumes the dames of our prize, so rich a shade, so green a soul, our English fairies never trod. See the expression, how beautifully expresses. No British poetry could bring out the beauty of peacock presented in this poem. So that means Indian peacock is superior to all the birds in British country. That's what we find here. There is one more writer, Heyman Wilson. His interest was in the Oriental studies, especially rural life. He was the one who translated Meghdut of Kalidasa. He wrote a beautiful poem on Ganga. See, I have deliberately chosen only valid poems. This poem, when you have free time, you can go through. Nowadays, we talk about subaltern study. Subalterns, generally, we think that 18th century or 19th century, they were not suitable for the harmonious life of people. It is not so. In this particular poem, you find how higher class or as well as the lower class might be different caste. People of different caste, they had the tendency to go together. As well as we believed women were put inside the bars of the house. We think that 19th century or 18th century, women were restricted to the house. It is not so. In this poem, you find how there is no caste difference, how there is no gender discrimination. Let us go through the poem consciously. It's a poem on Ganga, a never-ending train. This train refers to river Ganges, collects of every caste and age and sex. This shows that first two lines reveal there is no caste, there is no age, there is no sex for the river Ganga. Grave in the tide, the Brahmin stands. So one side you find the Brahmin standing there and folds his cord or twirls his hands and tells his heads and all unheard, mutters a solemn mystic word. With reverence, the Sudra drips. Sudra refers to the low caste. So there is a portrayal of Sudra also. Fervently the current slips. So there is the same current shifting one to the other. That to the humbler hopes conveys a future life of happier days. That shows that discrimination projected in many writings sounds something inferior when you come across such a harmonious relationship between these two castes. Again, you find the continuity of the poem Ganga, but cheap to India's simple daughters, assemble in the hallowed waters, with waves of classic model laden, like Grecian girl or Tuscan maiden, collecting thus their urns to fill, from gushing forth or trickling rill. See the beauty here. Indian girl was on par with Grecian or Tuscan maiden. That means there is no question of restricting women within the four walls. They participated very well in the flow of life. So this poem reveals the two aspects: caste, the caste differences as well as gender discrimination were irrelevant during the times. One more writer, Henry Meredith Parker, he wrote the title of the book is The Drought of Immortality and Other Poems. This writer was particularly influenced by our Indian philosophers as well as Indian mystics like Hafiz and Sadi. Moreover, Mahabharata and Vedas also influenced this poem. He expressed how the gods of India emerged when there was a churning of the ocean for Amrit. So this is particularly, it expresses how Vishnu emerged from lotus, how Shiva emerged from lotus, and then one was standing. He says, "Praise be the gods of India, then who with toil and strife wrung from the sea and gave to men those solaces of life." So they think gods are ever merciful, like Prometheus, who stole fire for the benefit of humans. Our gods too were much concerned about humans. Such a benevolent notions reflected in this poem. See, most of the times we think British people are always against our own rulers. The projection or the thing that comes to our mind when we think of Tipu Sultan is totally negative. That was the image created by the Britishers. Many British writings as well as our own Indian history reflects Tipu Sultan as a fanatic, a religious bigod, as a ferocious animal, as a cruel man. Whereas this particular poem by Parker, the British man, reveals the other side of Tipu Sultan. How Tipu Sultan was brave, how Tipu Sultan wanted to drive British. So when you read this poem, it shows Tipu was not a bigod, Tipu was not a cruel man, he was not a ferocious animal. It is not so. When you read this, you understand. Where sabers flashed and volleys rang, and quickest sped the parting breath, he questions. Now the answer. Thou, that means he refers to Tipu. From a life of empire, sprang to meet a soldier's death. He says, Tipu wanted to die a soldier. Allah, it is better thus to die. Why it is better? With war clouds hanging redly over us. So Tipu, he never wanted to settle to the British. Then live a life of infamy. He didn't want to live a life of infamy in the sense he didn't want to lose his own honor and then live his life with years of grief and shame before us. He knew very well death is better than leading and life which is of infamy. So this shows the other side of Tipu Sultan. There is one more poet, James Hankinson. He was a doctor who served in the Bengal Medical Service. He was the one who translated the Persian classics Shavana as well as Toy. His purpose is the beauty of Kashmir, recording the beauty of Kashmir. See, as we think Kashmir was not an ordinary place for them, they strongly believe Kashmir had its own spell. He says, whoever coming to Kashmir, they forget their beauty. Overwhelmed by the beauty of the place, they forgot themselves, they forgot. For example, this is the feeling we get when we read Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. So Robert Frost walks on the forest. He is mesmerized by the beauty. He doesn't know. He doesn't know whether to proceed or not. Same situation when one experiences when they go to Kashmir, such a glorious place. He reveals the beauty of Kashmir thus. He glories in the fact, that is the British officer, he glories in the fact and hunts with glee, jackal or fox, his inexperienced eyes. Seek all that can amuse beneath these burning skies. So once when the British servant comes to Kashmir, he forgets himself. Then he merges with the place. This is the implication of Kashmir. So this again earlier I referred to God, that is God murder. Again there is a reference to same kind of murder in the poem by James Hankinson. Let us read the poem. Has the world lost its pity and its pride, that human corpses does infect the air, rudely like one of garments thrown aside, to rot in public view upon the loitering tide. So when you read this stanza, you understand the sad environment provided there, a pathetic environment. So old people, sick people left to die on their own without the care of anybody at the banks of Ganges as well as Hooghly. That is reflected in this stanza. So when these British people started writing poems on these things like Sati as well as the death on the Ganges, they resulted in enlightenment. So many newspapers started publishing about widow burning, human sacrifices, as well as Jagannath Rath Yatra. This Jagannath Rath Yatra, it is really a perennial study, interest towards this study. Recently, I came across Britishers' view about Jagannath Rath Yatra. Most of the British people, they found Jagannath as a destructive force. I don't know how many of you are not unfamiliar with this Jagannath. I believe many of you know about Jagannath Rath Yatra. This is the festival being celebrated in Odisha. So what happens in Jagannath Yatra? There is a huge yatra, that is Radham. That is the chair is taken over in the festival. But what these British people they found, they were totally unimpressed by the beauty of Jagannath. That's why the English word Juggernaut. The English word Juggernaut, it implies a destructive force which destructs whatever thing that finds it on its way. So it leads to destruction. That is what they view in the perception of Jagannath to them. They did not accept the positive elements of Jagannath. Rather, Jagannath was a destructive force to them. They believed in Jagannath Rath Yatra, many people lost their lives. That's why they say in this particular poem, the ponderous car rolls on and crushes on. So actually, in today's scenario, we find two cars rolling there, but they saw only the negative side as they found death in this particular festival through blood and bones. It plows its dreadful path. It was published in Calcutta newspaper. But I want you to think over this issue. As British viewed Jagannath was not a destructive force, to my knowledge, because I happened to read an article written by an Englishman over Jagannath Rath Yatra. What I gained from that article, I have given it in a reference to. According to him, the British people had a cultural cataract. Within quote, I use the words cultural cataract. The British people, they could not see the beauty of Jagannath because of their cataract induced by their own culture. What we should understand at this point is we have two sects of people in India. One sect, the intelligentsia, that means who are fond of West. They always look for West for any understanding. There is the other side who are called dumb millions by our Gandhiji. Those dumb millions, so-called uneducated people, they were the ones who preserved the culture of our country. This is the findings which many scholars came up. Because these dumb millions, they had blind reverence. They did not have any kind of skeptic attitudes. Whatever was passed from the previous generation was accepted as holy. So they found everything holy when it was passed by the previous generation. Such a strong faith these people, uneducated people, have in their culture as well as the heritage. Whereas there is another set of people having our own Indians having Western mindset. That means they have skeptic attitude. Whatever is past, they will assess. So we cannot blame our dumb millions. What I say, what I understand, what I say, what I can conclude is they had the tendency to accept. Moreover, it is not possible to judge the actions of people who did everything with their own yardstick. That we should understand. Then the same kind of tendency is reflected in the another practice, sati. Sati, everybody knows, it was performed when during the rites. That means when the husband dies, the wife, the widow, is put on the funeral pyre. This practice was prevalent in our country, and then it needed some British writers like David Richardson to point out. So this stanza implies the negative sides of sati. Her last fond wishes breathe. A farewell smile is lingering on the calm, unclouded brow of yon deluded victim. Firmly now, she mounts with dauntless mien the funeral pyre, where lies her earthly love. So this implies we have to accept anyway with heavy heart. We had some practices which were detrimental to our fellow humans. That was exposed by British writers, and then we were also good enough to avoid those things. So in another poem, we find how India's cultural heritage was prevalent during the times. In one of the poems, Ruins of Bijapur, he reflects how Indian people failed to accept, failed to acknowledge the glories of their own country. Because in this stanza you find, I see but ruins around, and palaces, gardens, and towers. Those turrets, once soaring, now stoop to the ground, embraced by rude wilderness flowers. So, according to Richard Campbell, once glorious place it was, rather now you find only ruins. According to Richard, he cannot return his own country, return to his own country, because his own country too has become a desolate place. That's why he compares England with India. He says India is better than his own country. He reveals how his own country is now degenerated. There is no life there. What we find in T.S. Eliot is reflected here too. Let me quote, the living whom I had left whereof the living no more. He says, my England is no more the same England. It is bereft. There is no longing, from which in my youth I was. So when I was young, the country was totally different. But now their hearts were changed at the core. That means the Britishers have been changed. And over the spot where my cradle was placed, the lizard crept. That means the implication of lizard here. That means what he finds, there is no life there, only death in his own England. That's why he wants India to be an alternate place. He criticizes British very much, the administration of British too. Then he supports India's struggle for freedom. See, this question he makes, what's the question he makes? Will India once again be free? See the question. This question, it was made in 19th century, nearly 100 years ahead of the establishment of Indian National Congress. He asked, will India once again be free? And will she dare to break her chain and drive the oppressors over the sea? The East proclaims the coming morn, that glorious time is not so far, when India and her sons shall rise. So this is the outcome we get. there is a hope that India would be liberated. He made it before 100 years ago, before the inauguration of Indian National Congress. So far, I have done only the analysis of later writings. I want to tell you, I want to show you how our own British poets, the familiar poets, viewed India. Why I used the other things first is these things are now secondary portrayal. That means for up to 18th century, India was just known for its physical wealth, physical beauty as well as wealth. That's why in Geoffrey Chaucer's Knight's Tale you find reference to India. And with orchids, so the poets sing, with a great ambitious the Indian king. On a bay shield, whose wrappings were of steel, covered in cloth of gold from haunch to heel, fretted with diapher. This stanza talks about the wealth of India, how Indians were having, they were fond of gold and silver. That means the glorious wealth of India is portrayed in this stanza. I want you to note this, except wealth as well as the physical beauty, nothing is highlighted. In Milton's writings, how India is portrayed. According to Milton, India is a place that is known for its beauty. He says, throng numberless like the pigment rays beyond the Indian mount of fairy elves. Another poem in book 2 of Paradise Lost. High on a throne of royal state, which far outshow the wealth of farmers and of kin, or where the gorgeous east with richest hand showers on her kings. Again, this shows the wealth of India, beauty of the physical state. One more poem, that is Paradise Regained, book 2, you find India as far as the Indus East. In book 5, you find mentioning of India's wealth again. That means Chaucer, Milton, then other later poets. They were fond of India's wealth as well as beauty, nothing more. You find in Alexander Pope's Rape of the Lock, there is an expression. His casket, India's glowing gems unlocks, and all Arabia breathes from wonder box. Again, this is about the wealth portrayed in the casket prepared in India. Again, there is the heightened understanding of India in the 18th century. From 18th century, the perception towards India changed among the British poets as well as other British writers. Because in the 18th century, there were many translations of Indian texts, especially texts from Sanskrit into English. Two prominent texts that attracted the British poets, they were Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita. William Blake is known to many of us, but in his writings you find the reflection of Orient. You take one example we can give is, he wonders the same creation creates both the lamb and the tiger. Say the same philosophy is reflected in Advaita, which comes from India. The foremost poet who is familiar with Advaita philosophy is none other than Coleridge. See the acknowledgement he makes in one of his letters. Let us read the acknowledgement. We have in this world, which I have now before me, an extract from the great poem of India. So he is talking about Bhagavad Gita. The extract from the great poem implies Bhagavad Gita, where pantheism has displayed its banners and waved in victory over 300 million men. And this has been published in England as a proof of sublimity beyond excellence of Milton. He says Bhagavad Gita is beyond the excellence of Milton in the true adoration of the Supreme Being. So this is what Gita does to Coleridge. Again, his Coleridge's understanding of Brahman and Vishnu in one of his letters. Let me read within quotes. At other times, I adopt the Brahman creed and say, it is better to sit than to stand. It is better to lie than to sit. It is better to sleep than to wake. But death is the best of all. I should much wish, like the Indian Vishnu, to float along an Indian ocean. So he says, he projects how Indian god Vishnu is floating in the infinite ocean. He is lying on the ocean on the snake. Then cradled at the flower of lotus, He wakes once in a million years for a few minutes. So this is the understanding of Coleridge towards Indian Upanishads as well as Advaita. What kind of philosophy is in Wordsworth? Let us find Advaita philosophy. Advaita philosophy is very simple. It believes creator and creation, they are inseparable. I would like to give you a quote from Rabindranath Tagore. Tagore wrote a beautiful essay, and then in that he says, the Supreme Being has created us in his own image, and the marriage has been completed. That's the findings of Tagore. That's the implication of Advaita philosophy too. Creator, that one may question, dancer be separated from the dance? Same implication. Creator and creation can't be separated. This philosophy is expressed in Byron too. According to Byron, creation was a part of Ansha. Ansha, you know, it is part of the divine. See his Prometheus, the poem, the stanza from Prometheus. Thou cut a symbol and a sign to mortals of the gate and force. Like thee, man is impart divine. Thee in the sense God. Like God, man is impart divine. A troubled stream from a pure source. That means the source which created humans, that's a pure source. Man shares that purity. This implication, this thought is expressed by Krishna in Gita. Let me quote, the entire creation and living being inmade from me and are my part. According to Krishna, humans as well as all creations are part of himself. Tennyson and Yeats, they are to be recognized with reference to their belief in Indian Upanishad. Tennyson in his In Memoriam, he reveals his faith, how human life came out of evolution. Evolution in the sense, it is not Darwinism, rather it is mental. That means from sensory to enlightenment. Tennyson talks about in memoriam. Same kind of feeling is expressed in our Indian philosophy, especially reincarnation. That means when garments become old, we throw the garment, we wear a new one. Such philosophy is expressed by W.B. Yeats too. Because in Yeats you find the profound use of Indian images. According to Yeats, India and Ireland, they had a shared inheritance. The reason is Yeats believed Ireland came, the word Ire itself a part of the word Iris, A-Y-R-U-S. Ire, E-I-R-E came from A-R-I-E-S, Iris. So many research also been carried out between the connection, to show the connection between India and Ireland. So according to Yeats, Indians shared the inheritance with Irish people. He was interested in the translation of Upanishad. He worked with Swami Purohit. He brought out the translation of Upanishad too. One of the poems, The Two Trees, you find how Indian images used. Let me quote, beloved, gaze in thy own heart. The holy tree is growing there. From joy, the holy branches start, and all the trembling flowers there bear. So here, the image of tree, it is particularly, it belongs to India. Most of the Indian sacred texts, they reveal how tree is an Indian image. There is a reference to Taittiriya Upanishad in this stanza. In Upanishad, you find these lines. I am the invigorator of the tree. I am like the pure reality that is in the sun. So Upanishad says, creation is holy because the creator is holy. One more name which we need to understand is T.S. Eliot. Everybody knows about T.S. Eliot and his understanding. Eliot was much impressed by Bhagavad Gita, Upanishad, as well as Buddhist philosophy. We need not say whether Eliot is impressed by Indian thought or not. Let us see his own words within quotes. Let me quote his acknowledgement. Within quotes, long ago, I studied ancient Indian languages. I know that my own poetry shows the influences of Indian thought and sensibility. So Eliot accepts Indian thoughts and philosophy influenced his writings. This same philosophy is reflected in the popular poem The Wasteland. I have taken only the last section. fifth section, what the thunder said. See, this is a direct connection to Upanishad. In Upanishad, especially Taittiriya Upanishad, you find three advice include that Dayadvam Damyata. There are three things. Gods have given these three advices to two categories. One is to humans. Humans have to give. That is datta, to give. Then there is Damyata. Damyata, it is for the demons. The demons, they should be compassionate because they should be merciful. Whereas third category comes the gods. The gods need to control because the gods are invested with so much power. So they should know how to control their emotions. That's the idea. The da implies voice of thunder. How can we conclude this datta dayadu damyata from taken from Upanishad? There is a direct reference there. This understanding is very important. See, he implies Ganga was sunken. Ganga was sunken means everything was under veil. Black clouds gathered over our Himalayas. So the jungle crouched and there is silence. He says this is a positive note about the poem. All through the poem, only negative things he portrayed. Even Ganga is full of impure things. Himalaya is covered with sins. But the ending is positive. The thunder is the voice of God. The voice of God gives suggestions to humans. You need to give. You need to accept reality. You need to overcome your longings and passion. So this implies the reflection of Upanishad in the wasteland. There is one more poem, Four Quartets, which garnered much attention because in four quartets you find the affinity with other religions. In this, Eliot brings out the Vedantic doctrine. See the quote, the way up and the way down of the same. This is the philosophy expressed in Gita 2. According to Bhagavad Gita, time present, time past, or both perhaps present in time future, and time future contained in time past. If all time is eternally present, all time is unredeemable. This idea is reflected in four quarters, but we should understand four quarters is a collection of four different sections written over a period of 7 years. They have titles like East Cooker, Burn Norton, Dry Salvages, then Little Wedding. Everyone has its own beauty because in one there is, in my end is my beginning. This is the beginning of the first stanza, first section. End is my beginning was, I have to forget my ego. When I forget my ego, when I forget my forsake myself, then I can merge with God. This is the philosophy expressed in Upanishad. So far I have evaluated poets as well as novel writers. Now let us critically evaluate from the findings. We cannot deny the British admired India initially. When Britishers came to India, the first reaction was admiration. They admired India for its beauty. They admired our culture. They knew we were, I quote, men of courage. We were for knowledge. We were sober. We were industrious. We were beautiful. We were of gentle temper. But slowly, conditions changed. The conditions changed because of some prominent reasons. They have come here for with the mission of colonizers. Slowly, the mission of colonizers crept in. So they were propelled by the desire to control. It was their situation too. That's why there was a alienation here. See, this one, you would be astonished who said these things. I count the grey barbarian lower than the Christian child. I believe you couldn't imagine who said these lines. It was said by Tennyson. Tennyson says, see his expression, I count the grey barbarian, he refers to Indians, lower than the Christian child. This was his impression of Indian people. Then there is an idea of national character too. This we fail to notice. The problem with the British writing is they did not acknowledge the individuality of Indians. Most of the time, they assumed India as one country. That is why they believed in the effects of climate. They thought Indian people behave in a certain way because of the climate of the country. This is impractical, unimaginable too. Climate influencing the minds of people. That was the first impression. They believed because of this climate, India cannot achieve its liberty because Indians were unmanly, childish, effeminate, indolent. Look at these expressions. We were unmanly, we were childish, we were effeminate, we were indolent. Why indolent? Because of our religion. We were immune to change. Why we were immune to change? Because our religion was immune to change. That was the way they convinced the minds of Indians. One of the writers, especially, he goes to the extent of calling, look at these two quotes. You would be amazed having their views. According to Steele, Megasthenes' account of his travels through India in the year 300 BC might have been written today. For these people don't change. He says in 300 BC, Megasthenes gave this account, but that is relevant even today because Indians never change. See the sarcasm here. Then one more expression by Kruger. Look at that. Oriental crowd was trapped in the garb of 2000 years ago, whose thoughts and characteristics had changed almost as little as the fashion of our outward covering. He says, Indians, they did not change they did not change their dressing sense. Same way, they did not change their thoughts even for 2000 years. Who can degrade India more than these two quotes? I am not sure. See the beauty. Why these people did, we may question. Why these British writers viewed India in that sense? Very simple. They thought Indians were childish. Indians were childlike as well as childish. That means these British writers, they had to father our Indian people. That's why in the novels written by the British people, you find Indian people being parented by Britishers. So Indians were childlike, they didn't have understanding of their own, so naturally they needed the advice of the British people. So clever manipulation they had. Again, see I told you in my earlier slide how they cleverly handled the division between Hindus and Muslims. You find the division implied here. They believed in infinite quality of Hindus, whereas they preferred Muslim character. They believed Hindus were ineffective, whereas they preferred Muslims because they thought Muslims were athletic, Muslims were invaders, Muslims were active. So deliberately they framed such a conclusion among the people so that they can divide one from the other. But we cannot be happy as Muslims were preferred there. See the twist here. Though irrespective of whether Muslim or Hindu, they hated all the educated and intellectual Indians. They did not accept intellectual Indians. They did not accept educated Indians. They did not accept Indians of self-esteem because according to them, Indians were dumb. Indians were rustics. Indians were uncouth. Though, so there are some Indians who returned from abroad. We can find them in their novels, but most of them are laughing stocks for them. They did not acknowledge educated Indians too. That's the reflection you find in many novels. But you find the projection of Aya, Butler, and Barrett. See, these people do the menial services. The Britishers were familiar with them. So rather than the educated Indians, you find the better reflection of these people in their novels. Then these middle class Indians, they were the ones most disliked because they identified middle class Indians with the freedom movement. That means these middle class Indians were responsible for liberation movement. So they hated the movement, they hated Indians too. Then as well as conventionalized representation of Indian character. They said Indians means they were proven. Indians means they were suspects. See, in most of the novels you find Indians became rebels. They joined national movements because they were rejected by their girlfriends, British girlfriends. They were denied job by the British masters. So they manipulate. Coming to my last part, this slide would throw you light. How certain things which are ignored can definitely awaken our understanding. See, the only one writer I am going to give here, that is Huxley. Everybody knows Huxley is so negative in his portrayal, but I can, based on my understanding, based on my readings, I can conclude Huxley can very well be placed on par with our Indians, because Huxley's novels, they revealed the Indian culture to the highest. Huxley was born in the Victoria's era. That time there was a decline in the moral outside. Then there was a deterioration of Victorian values too. Social, political, cultural issues were prominent during the era. What happens in Huxley's thought? In the beginning, in the former works, some of you may be familiar with Brave Mover, or you can say Point Counterpoint, or you can say the work Island, or you can say that Pilot, Justin Pilot. These are the works we are aware of Huxley. But in Huxley, you can find the evolution of thought. Beginning stage, it is agnosticism. That is questioning everything, doesn't believe, especially Brave New World. There is cynicism in Brave New World too, whereas there is slow movement towards humanism and finally mysticism. Mysticism culminates, humanism you can find in that Justin Pilot, whereas in Island, the work Island, you find mysticism. That's why his Weltanschauung. Weltanschauung is a German word which means his final outlook. Huxley's final outlook towards life is mysticism. Huxley was influenced by World War I as well as its after effects. Huxley's own expression, let us have a look. In one of his letters, he wrote, I have been interested in mysticism ever since I was an undergraduate. This mysticism he gained from India, especially when he visited India in 1925. He landed at Bombay. He visited so many princely states, Srinagar, Lahore, Delhi, Agra, Fatehpur Sikri, Kanpur, Lucknow, Benares, and Calcutta. See, but we cannot deny the first impression Bombay had on Huxley. See, when he came to Bombay, he was totally affected by the plight of the city. Everywhere there was poverty. Huxley was much dejected. But what we need to understand, that dejection led him to new understanding, led him to the awareness of life. He started searching his own soul. Because in one of his poems, that is Rajputna poems, he says, for example, there is a beautiful work, Jesting Pilot. In Jesting Pilot, Huxley reveals. Let me give an instance from Jesting Pilot. Huxley visits a state, princely state, Rajput, and then he is offered an elephant to have a glance of the city. He is on the back of elephant. Then he uses the expression earthquake. He calls elephant as earthquake. The earthquake started moving, and then suddenly the earthquake stands at a place. It started excreting. Then he finds an old lady rushing towards the excrement. Then she gathers the excrement led by the elephant, and then she thanked that elephant profusely. She felt it was a manna. Even the excrement of the elephant was a manna to her, God-given gift. So Huxley was much moved by that side. He believed the poverty of India was so terrible. That is why he started realizing the purpose of his own soul. He let us quote. In India, he had been touched into reflection. According to Lawrence, he had been touched into reflection. Some of the instances in his works, in Chrome Yellow, you find Priscilla as well as Dennis. They make the quest for the infinite, which is possible in Indian philosophy. Then there is one more Antique Hay, work Antique Hay. You find the question made by the character Kasmi. He asks, what are science and art? What are religion and philosophy? But so many expressions in human terms of some reality more than human. So according to Huxley, Newton became Michelangelo. That means art and science both are same. Both are taking humans towards a higher reality. So there is one more work written by Huxley, that's ends and means. In this ends and means, the thorough philosophy, the thorough implication of Bhagavad Gita you can find. Look at the stanza taken from Huxley's ends and means. The ideal man is the non-attached man, non-attached to his bodily sensations and lusts, non-attached to his craving for power and possessions, non-attached to the objects of his various desires, non-attached to his anger and hatred, non-attached to his exclusive loves, non-attached to wealth, fame, social position, non-attached even to science, art, speculation, philanthropy. For like patriotism, they are not enough. So this kind of non-attachment is taught in Bhagavad Gita, which you find in Huxley. So we can very well conclude Indian outlook. That means Indian outlook is found in British writings. Only thing we are aware the supreme quality of our own culture based on their writings. It doesn't mean that our writers don't project. Rather, when we do certain things, we may fall a prey to blind reverence towards our culture. Whereas when someone other than our culture talks about the same, there would be some kind of impartial views too. That is what we come across in the writings of these writers. But at the same time, we cannot deny there was negative portrayal, there was animosity towards our Indian culture too, that we cannot deny. Most thing what we can understand based on this expression is our culture is universal. We need not hold any torchlight to bring it to limelight. It is like sun. Whether you show it or not, it would be visible. Only thing we have to open our eyes. That is what these Westerners did. Most of the ideas I have taken from this book. You can, when you read these two works, you can understand. That's India and World Literature, published by ICCR. When you read this book, you can understand almost all these points. This was actually my first attempt to analyze the impact of India in British literature. So I believe you would ask some more prominent question. Thank you, one and all. I tested your patience. Still, thank you very much for your cooperation.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Your presentation was mind-blowing to say the least, sir, and there were, I need not say, the feedback in the live chat stream is overwhelming. They have from enriching to informative to excellent, most excellent session, one of the best sessions ever, and they have commented. We will move on to a short question and answer session, sir.
Yeah, true. I read up. That's what.
So, okay, sir. Sir, Professor Saeed Abdul Kadir asked, did the majority of Britishers in India think that India and its culture was superior to England and its culture?
Yes.
And I would add, is there anything in literature which is proof of this or which is evidence of this?
See, the whole slides are about it now, sir. Many places we find how Indian, see, I at the same time, I say we cannot eulogize our own culture. Moreover, one culture cannot be equated with other culture. We hope every culture is supreme. That is the latest conclusion by our cultural critics. No culture is inferior or superior. So we need not go for that. The best what we can do is to accept what is good in our culture as well as to respect what is good in other culture. That is what I would like to suggest. No need to compare one culture with other culture. But naturally, we have to say our culture is supreme because most of the Westerners turn towards India for the solution to their maladies. That means the maladies created by the Western civilization can be cured by Indian philosophy. That is the belief which is proved, especially by the Kipling in his King.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Madam Devyani Agarwal thinks that India is yet not decolonized and we
Yeah,
still
true.
look to the West for solutions, theories, approvals, and interpretations. Your thoughts on this, sir?
That is why I said there are two kinds of people. One kind that's dumb millions. They accept with blind revelation whatever is passed from the previous generation. Whereas there is one more sect, the intelligentsia, so-called educated writers. They always think, they always portray India in bad light. That attitude should be changed. One example we can give, you all the time you are showing the wounded civilization, all the time you are showing the white tiger, then who will express the Bengal tiger? That is my question. Most of the time you show you portray only the negative side, though there are so many positive aspects too. Forget about the negatives, portray the goods. Automatically the negatives will be wiped away. That's what I believe.
Thank you, sir. We have an intriguing question by Dr. Aloysius Albert.
Yeah.
It's on your screen, sir.
Yeah, it is there. You have depicted the Orients through the eyes of the Occidents. As an Orient, how do you look at the provenance Occidents in our reading and research in India? See, yes, I agree. What we find, most of the Britishers, they had some kind of interest towards India. It was not, we cannot say it was just to bring ourselves to limelight. It is not so. Out of curiosity, they think India had some mysticism in it. They wanted to unravel the mystic aspect of India, but the outcome is totally different. The more they understand, the more they are confused. So the more they try to go deep, more they are confused. That is what we find in their understanding. There is no conclusion. That's the beauty of Indian mysticism. Your question is the answer. Your finding becomes the question once again. That's what. There is no conclusion for it. Yeah, there is one more question. How Britishers came to know? In the slides I have given, in the 19th century, so many classic works, especially works from Sanskrit. Bhagavad Gita was translated, Meghdut was translated, Upanishads were translated, then Gita was translated, Charles Wilkins translated Gita into English. So when these people, because of the translations into English, these people came to know about these different, especially there is a book called Sacred Text of the East that gave new limelight to the Max Muller wrote the book Sacred Text of the East. It projected so many beautiful texts of Indian. So my humble request, we cannot do away with Sanskrit, because Sanskrit is the most of the people believe it is the link between the past and the present. If you avoid Sanskrit, definitely we have to avoid the link between the past. That's why we shouldn't be fanatic in this sense. Yeah, others can be fanatic. We literary scholars, we critics, we students of literature, we should be free from fanaticism. We should accept even Sanskrit and any other link languages that can give us the knowledge of the past, the wisdom of the past. Excellent. Yeah. How do you respond to Western materialism and Eastern spiritualism, or Western house and Eastern home in Occidental writings? See, this is what I said. West is always for materialism. There is no Western materialism at all. West is always for materialism. You can ask why in India there is no materialism. For that, I have to pose the previous question, that is neo-colonialism. A kind of imperial tendency is practiced here. So, our basic structure, it is spirituality, maybe invaded by neo-imperialism, might be the materialism, but they are just added things. That's not the part of our own culture. We are always, in spite of all the wealth, we move towards spirituality. Our question is not what is wealth. Our question is what is knowledge, what is life, what is understanding. So there is no Western materialism and all. West is for materialism, East is for spirituality. That's not my conclusion. That is what we come across in our scriptures. You take our scriptures, whatever scriptures we have, they teach only the understanding of the divine as the uh, ultimate thing which any human has to achieve.
Thank you, sir. Sir, we will take one final question, and the
Yeah.
participants can send us their queries by email as well.
Sure,
This
sir.
question was repeatedly asked in this chat stream at least thrice. Do you
Yeah,
think
yeah.
that the British worked for our development, Indian development, and is this has this has been depicted in their
No,
literature?
no. Britishers, right from the beginning in all literatures, except translations, you cannot find a genuine interest. Yes, they are motivated by their own selfish sake because if they wanted to search the meaning of life, that was possible only in India. They themselves acknowledge the characters, their own characters acknowledge findings of life. The meaning of life can be gained only in India. That is why they wanted to focus here. Earlier, they wanted to amass wealth. That was done. After next to wealth, they wanted peace of mind, which was possible in India. So, with the selfish motives, they started exploring, but it resulted in positive things for India too. Our culture spread to various countries. So we are gifted in that way. There is no denying the fact. We are benefited.
Thank you so much, sir. With that, we come to the end of the question and answer session. I would like now to invite Dr. Rama, convener of the FDP, professor and head Department of English and other foreign languages, to give her final comments. Ma'am, over to you.
Yes, yes, Walter. I mean, what do I say except the fact that Dr. Kumaran has actually sown the seed for research on this particular topic today. He's flooded us with so much of information that I think young scholars, research scholars, can take this up as a topic for their doctoral research. Thank you so much, sir. You have shown us both sides of the coin. I think you did not get one-sided, but you showed us both the sides of the coin, and now it is for, Indians, yes, now to take it to the next level. I think we first have to respect and appreciate our heritage and our culture, and I think the British were so much in awe of our beauty and our culture and our mysticism that actually they were jealous. They wanted to dominate us. And that is, as you said, reflected in most of the literature that we see today. But in the process, they have also shown to the world outside the beauty of India in some way or the other indirectly. So thank you so much, sir. Thank you for sparing your time and doing so much of research to give us this wonderful talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. I thank everyone for having arranged this. Audience also deserve an applause from me. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Sir, I kindly request your permission to give a brief report. I will be giving a brief report
Yeah, please,
on the.
please, please, sir. Yes, sir. Please.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
I take this opportunity to give you all a brief report on the faculty development program on futuristic trends of language and literature impact on 21st century learners, organized by the Department of English and other foreign languages, SRM Institute of Science and Technology, Ramapuram campus, Chennai. We started out with just an idea to have an FDP, which was somewhat different. And we, being a part of a department which caters to both English and foreign language requirements of the curriculum at SRM IST, we thought that this would be an innovative and excellent idea, and we proposed this to our convener, Dr. Rema, and she immediately accepted, and we went forward with it. The 6-day FDP covered topics on language and literature in English, French, German, and Japanese domains, and its influence on 21st century learners and its relevance in the modern day. We have had 6 resource persons of repute deliver mind-blowing lecture presentations on very insightful and thought-provoking topics. The number of faculty and research scholars who registered for this event, over almost 3,000, 2,924 to be exact, and from 15 plus states across the nation, several countries abroad like UAE, Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, Indonesia, Bangladesh, Nepal, and Sri Lanka, who enthusiastically participated in almost all the days of the FDP. So day 1 of the FDP was on Post-humanism, a revelation or revolution by Dr. S. Veeramani, Assistant Professor in English, Government Arts College, Kulitalai. 2,500 plus participants attended the webinar, and the live session has reached almost 6,000 views on YouTube. Day 2 of the FDP was on contextualizing English language and ELT in India by Dr. Deepesh Chandrasekharan, ELT expert teacher trainer, who delivered another mind-blowing session which was attended by over 2,000 plus participants and has crossed 5,000 views. Day 3 of the FDP was on theatre and its role in French language teaching by Dr. Adeline Albert, Associate Professor and Head, Department of French, Ethiraj College for Women, Chennai. A very stimulating and intriguing lecture by a very enthusiastic speaker, which was received with an overwhelming feedback from around 2,850 participants with almost 3.5k views. Day 4 of the FDP took off with Why Learning German is a Good Investment by Mr. Jayasandran V, a German language expert, teacher trainer, and former assistant professor in German, SRM IST Ramapuram. A session which was the first of its kind with not only a lecture presentation, but also a highly interactive discussion with the resource person, which was viewed till date by 2.5k interested faculty and scholars. Nihongo de Hanashimasho, Let's Speak Japanese by Ms. Uma Balu, Japanese language expert, entrepreneur. Chennai was rolled out on the 5th day of the FDP, a very experienced, enthusiastic, and dynamic person whose session was received with extremely positive feedback from over 2,500 plus attendees and around 3k viewers across the world. It goes without saying that day 6 of the FDP is also a huge success. Today's session on Mirroring the Orient, the reflection of Indian heritage and English literature by Dr. Kumaran, assistant professor, PG and research department of English, PG and research department of English, Thiruvalluvar Government Arts College, Rasipuram, who has delivered quite an insightful and thought-provoking lecture on this topic. And we currently have over 1,500 viewers with around 400 plus active members in the live chat stream at this moment. And I'm sure hundreds more will be viewing today's session in the days to come. So this is the culmination of the success that this FDP has had right from day one. Last but not the least, among the 3,000 close to 3,000 faculty and research scholars who registered for this FDP, over 2,000 have attended 3 sessions or more and will be getting certificates for the 1 week FDP. More than 600 have attended and actively participated on all the days of the 1 week FDP. We have had 6 live webinars, one on each day since Monday, the 13th of July, till today, the 6th day, 18th of July. And this, as this is a 1 week FDP, we have left tomorrow open for queries and interaction with us. We will be leaving the forum open on the Telegram group tomorrow for this purpose, and we'll also be responding to emails. So feedback, comments, and queries have been flooding our inboxes since day one, and we have tried to respond to each and every one. Though we might have missed a few, we have sent out 6,000 plus emails from 4 different accounts over the last 1 week, which is by God's grace an accomplishment in itself, if I may say so myself. Your feedback is most welcome, and we invite you all to keep in touch with us till you get your certificates. With that, I come to the end of this report and would like to now call upon my colleague and FDP co-coordinator, Dr. S. Savitha, to deliver the formal final vote of thanks. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Walter. Good afternoon. SRM Institute of Science and Technology, Ramapuram, deem it a pleasure to host all the participants for the 6 days faculty development program on futuristic trends of language and literature organized by the Department of English and other foreign languages. More than 3,000 participants from various colleges and universities participated in this FDP. This is a huge success in itself. My sincere thanks to all the participants for joining us from across the world. This is a unique opportunity to learn from the best experts in English as well foreign languages. I hope that your takeaways were satisfactory. We have been fortunate to have some of the eminent persons from academia. I would like to thank our speakers, Dr. Veeramani, Dr. Deepesh Chandrasekharan, Dr. Adeline Albert, Mr. Jayasenduran, Mrs. Uma Balu, and Dr. Kumaran for making excellent presentations and making this faculty development program interesting and meaningful. I express my heartfelt gratitude to all the speakers for readily accepting our invite and sparing their precious time with us. We had an opportunity to hear all our speakers, and this will surely encourage us in our future events. I am very much thankful to our management, heads of institution, and continuous support and advice, which have greatly helped towards the successful organization of the faculty development program. I must mention sincere gratitude to our head of the department, Dr. Rema, for her incredible leadership, timely and proper advice, and the freedom in decision making provided has been indispensable to work on this FDP. Thank you, ma'am. I will be failing in my duty if I do not mention my deepest sense of appreciation and would place on record my hearty thanks to Dr. Walter, Joint Coordinator. He has been a constant supporter and real performer of his responsibilities. I sincerely recognize his constant support with gratitude and ensure that this day becomes a memorable success. With a deep sense of appreciation, I thank my colleague Mrs. Preetha for providing all possible technical support and guidance. I also extend my thanks to all my colleagues in the department for their enormous cooperation in the organization of this FDP. I once again thank you everyone for all your contribution made for the success of this week-long faculty development program. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Oh,
With that, we come to the end of the session. Thank you, Kumaran sir. Thank you a lot. Uh, Rama ma'am, thanks a lot.
yeah. I think
Yes,
we
sir,
have.
we can leave the session, sir. Bottom, we
Okay.
can leave the
Okay.
session.
Thank you, Dr. Kumaran. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.